The US will file criminal charges against crew of a ship that it seized in the North Atlantic. The Bella 1, which has renamed itself as Marinera, was apprehended after a pursuit lasting almost 2 weeks. A second tanker, Sophia, was boarded by US forces in the Caribbean. Now, US Attorney General Pam Bondi announced that the crew of Bella 1 is under investigation for failing to comply with US Coast Guard orders, and criminal charges are being pursued. US forces boarded the Russian-flagged vessel as it travelled through the waters between Iceland and Scotland. The UK Royal Navy gave logistical support by air and sea. Bella 1 had thwarted an earlier attempt to board it last month near Venezuela. It changed its name to Marinera, painted a Russian flag on one of its sides, and then changed its registration to Russia. Reports suggested that Russia had dispatched a submarine to safeguard the vessel, but it appears that US forces were able to board the tanker without facing any resistance. Moscow has denounced the seizure and demanded that the US treat Russians aboard properly and permit them to return to Russia quickly. The Transport Ministry said that it had given the vessel temporary permission to use the Russian flag. The White House, however, described the ship as a Venezuelan shadow fleet vessel deemed stateless.
This was a Venezuelan shadow fleet vessel that has transported sanctioned oil, and the United States of America, under this president, is not going to tolerate that. I would also just add the vessel had a judicial seizure order and the crew, so that means the crew is now subject to prosecution for any applicable violation of federal law, and they will be brought to the United States for such prosecution if necessary.
Britain provided enabling support during the US operation to seize the tanker in the North Atlantic. A Royal Navy ship provided support for US forces, while the Royal Air Force provided surveillance support from the air. UK has stressed that their involvement was part of a wider crackdown on Russia's shadow fleet.
Following a request from the US, I authorised the use of UK bases and the deployment of Royal Navy and RAF assets to support the operation, including airborne surveillance and the RFA ship Tide Force. This was a US operation. No UK personnel took part in the boarding.
The Times, citing a source in the British Defence Ministry, reported that further operations against Russian shadow fleet have not been ruled out. Sources also said that the UK had been helping the US to plan the mission for as long as a week.